Welcome to Wellness Waves, everyone. Today, we're diving into a fascinating area of longevity science, specifically focusing on a peptide that's generating incredible buzz. This isn't just any peptide, it's one of the best in the world for longevity. And while we initially looked at it for tissue repair, the research is starting to show much more.
A peptide for longevity? That sounds almost too good to be true, Dr. Finch. What exactly is this compound, and what kind of promises are we talking about?
We're talking about GHK-Copper Peptide, or GHK-Cu. And when you look at the characteristics in the literature, you find very early yet very promising evidence across the board when it comes to longevity. This ranges from cognitive function, potentially stopping cognitive impairment, to collagen formation, wound healing, anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects, and even stem cell differentiation, which is huge.
So it's not just for one thing, it's impacting so many different aspects of aging and health.
Exactly. We're going to break down how this happens with each one, and we're also going to talk about the literature. Now, full disclaimer, Sarah, peptides are still a bit foreign territory. Not a lot of doctors are yet comfortable talking about them. Most of the literature is still in rodents, with very little human model research. So you have to take it with a grain of salt and understand that these are very promising things, but the human data is still accumulating.
Understood. So it's promising, but we're still in the early stages of human research. What exactly is GHK-Cu?
Before we get into the literature, let's define GHK-Cu. It's what's called a tripeptide. It's naturally occurring in our body, and it just has an affinity for copper. So usually, once it's released in the body, it binds to copper. In a peptide form that you would take, it's already GHK-Cu. They bind it to copper because they know that's how you get the best effect.
And does our natural level of GHK-Cu change with age?
Significantly. When you're about 20 years old, you have about 200 nanograms per milliliter of GHK already. By the time you're 60, that goes down to 80. So you can see it's something that diminishes with age and that we may want to restore as we get a little bit older. Let's start with the cognitive benefits first. There's a really interesting study published in Aging Pathobiology and Therapeutics. It looked at mice, again, a lot of this literature is in mice, and treated them with GHK for 5 days. On the last 2 days, they fully sleep-deprived the mice to replicate cognitive impairment.
So they were testing if GHK-Cu could protect against the cognitive impact of sleep deprivation.
Precisely. What they found is that there was only a small reduction in cognitive function in the mice that took the GHK, compared to mice that didn't take GHK, which ended up being very mentally and cognitively impaired. After 2 days of sleep deprivation, those that took the peptide experienced much less impairment.
That's incredible. So it had a protective effect on the brain.
Essentially, you're getting this sort of cognitive, almost restoration effect. And you could flash forward this to a longer-term play as cognitive impairment comes into play as we get older, and it might help stave off some of that. Mechanistically, they saw a reduction in inflammation in the hippocampus of those that took the GHK, which would explain why their memory was better.
And what about oxidative stress? Sleep deprivation is highly inflammatory.
They noticed that nitrotyrosine, something that usually elevates and causes oxidative stress when we are sleep deprived, was 11 to 14% lower in the GHK group. So it reduced this compound that normally causes extra stress in the brain. Short-term and long-term, this could be really cool for brain health. We've just touched on the cognitive benefits of GHK, but when we're talking about oxidative stress, we have to look at the big picture too, because it's something that happens when you're stressed in general, or when you're potentially unhealthy.
Oxidative stress is a major driver of aging and disease.
Absolutely. There was another study published in Life Sciences that looked at pulmonary fibrosis, which is largely induced by oxidative stress and inflammation. They found that giving subjects GHK-Cu reduced myeloperoxidase, a marker of oxidative stress, and also reduced inflammatory markers, TNF and IL-6. Essentially, it's going right to the root cause of the problem.
So it's directly combating inflammation and oxidative damage.
And even more. Another study looked at subjects with acute lung injury, again in mice. They found that giving GHK-Cu increased endogenous antioxidant production tremendously. It increased glutathione, which you've probably heard about, and superoxide dismutase, another powerful internal antioxidant. It essentially increased the body's ability to neutralize oxidative threats.
That's truly fascinating. It's boosting our body's own natural defense systems.
Why is this so fascinating? Well, as we get older, we have high levels of oxidative stress building just from being exposed to the environment for a lifetime. By increasing your body's ability to deal with those, you're increasing your body's innate ability to just neutralize threats. But now let's pivot over to the tissue repair side, because this is where it's good for potentially even building muscle or recovering from really tough workouts, or if you're just getting older and you need to repair faster from general wear and tear or injuries.
So it could help with both injury recovery and post-workout repair?
Yes, the Journal of Clinical Investigation took a look at rats that were wounded. For 7 days after they were wounded, they took GHK-Cu. Then after that first week, they continued every 3 days for 2 more weeks. They found that their tissue healing was exponentially faster, their collagen formation was significantly faster, and it increased connective tissue formation.
And how did it handle inflammation in healing? Because that's a delicate balance.
It acutely increased the inflammatory response, just the way that it should, not long-term, but it increased that initial inflammatory response that allows the initial bout of recovery and signaling to repair. This leads us into something very interesting, the collagen formation piece.
Collagen is so complex. It's the most abundant protein in our body, crucial for skin, joints, everything.
Exactly. Taking in collagen protein can certainly help, but you really need gene expression and genes to trigger collagen formation. Otherwise, collagen would just form wherever, right? It needs a method to its madness. There was a study published in the Journal of Aging Science that looked at MMP1 and MMP2, markers associated with an increase in collagen formation.
And what did GHK-Cu do here?
In vitro, they noticed that GHK-Cu increased collagen formation. It increased the gene expression associated with collagen formation, so it actually increased the genes that would call upon collagen to rebuild. They also found direct increases in collagen and elastin.
Collagen for rigidity, elastin for flexibility, that perfect balance for healthy tissue.
Exactly. So it allowed proper collagen formation. It wasn't too rigid, wasn't too elastic, it was just the right amount. And this extends to skin. Our skin is made up of collagen, which explains why we get more wrinkly as we get older. We lose collagen, we lose that elastic component, and we start to dehydrate. This could be extremely useful in cosmetic dermatology or just looking more youthful.
We've covered collagen and tissue repair. Now let's pivot to something else vital for healing and longevity, angiogenesis, which is blood vessel formation.
Blood vessel formation is huge for getting nutrients and oxygen to repairing tissues.
It is. And if you've heard of other peptides popular for injury repair like BPC-157 or TB-500, which are notorious for angiogenesis, GHK-Cu works in a similar way, but possibly a little more stable and with a little bit less of a giant dose.
A study published in Wound Repair and Regeneration looked at human cells in vitro and in live mice and found that GHK-Cu expedited wound healing, connective tissues, and increased blood vessel formation.
So it's accelerating the entire healing process.
What was really interesting, though, was there was an increase in something called CD31, which triggers adhesion. If you ripped your arm open, you'd need this CD31 to trigger adhesion so your skin would get sticky and heal properly. Mechanistically, GHK is already in our body. If you get an injury, endothelial cells release something called spark. And when spark is released, it triggers the release of GHK. So if we're adding GHK-Cu, we're essentially giving ourselves a circulating potential dose, making us heal a little bit faster.
That's fascinating. Our body naturally produces it for healing.
Personally, I have used GHK-Cu, and I'm going to share my experience. I was using GHK-Cu for a shoulder and back injury, and I noticed something unexpected. I had shaved my body for shooting some YouTube thumbnails, and about a week later, my body hair was growing back crazy fast.
Faster hair growth from a peptide for injury? That's quite the side effect.
Like, it was already half a centimeter in a week, and it just kept growing. I even started getting little ingrown hairs, and I thought, what's going on here? Then I did more literature review and found that there's actually more stem cell differentiation, potentially creating stronger and possibly more hair follicles.
So for thinning hair as we age, GHK-Cu could be beneficial.
Absolutely. As we're aging and our hair is thinning, GHK-Cu could be extremely beneficial. As we get older, our hair follicles kind of get weak and fall out because we have less stem cell differentiation. A study published in the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences shaved mice and then applied GHK-Cu to certain areas.
And the results?
They found those mice had thicker hair follicles, their hair was growing faster, and their hair was coming in thicker in those areas. Mechanistically, an in vitro study took skin cells, keratinocytes, and added GHK-Cu. At any dose, GHK increased keratinocyte formation, so skin cells replicated really fast.
So it's driving stem cell activity in the skin and follicles.
Yes. They looked at markers like integrin and P63, which are drivers of stem cell formation. There was an increase in both, showing more stem cells being formed around hair follicles. An analysis of the follicles showed they were cuboidal in nature, which is characteristic of a stem cell. So in the world of skin and hair stem cell formation, very, very promising stuff. We've covered the vast potential of GHK-Cu. So all in all, when you come down to a peptide that seems as though it's fairly safe based on the literature and kind of the dosing strategies, it might be a good choice.
But how does it compare to other well-known peptides, and what about practical application?
You have to look at the big picture. If you're looking at tissue repair and recovery, BPC 157 might be a stronger shot in the arm for a quick dose. TB 500 is an even more accelerated one. Combining those is really good for an injury, whereas GHK-Cu might be something that a doctor could say, hey, run this for a little bit longer for more of a long-term potential longevity approach.
So GHK-Cu is more of a sustained systemic longevity tool rather than an acute injury fix.
The evidence is certainly compelling. The Japanese concept of aging is optional often comes from these small, consistent daily practices that compound into extraordinary longevity. And GHK-Cu seems to fit that mold.
Dr. Finch, this has been an absolutely fascinating and groundbreaking discussion, from cognitive function to tissue repair, anti-inflammation, and even hair growth. GHK-Cu truly is a peptide that could change how we approach aging.
It really highlights the incredible advances in longevity science here. It encourages us to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible for human health and vitality.
Absolutely. So if you found this discussion thought-provoking, please hit that like button, subscribe to Wellness Waves for more cutting-edge health content, and leave a comment below telling us which of GHK-Cu's benefits surprised you the most.
We love hearing from you. As always, keep it locked in here on Wellness Waves for more insights tomorrow.